There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you folks. For those I haven't met, my name is Bridget. I'm the president of North Sound Trout Unlimited. We've got a few board members, a few volunteers on the call, and it is awesome to see all of you. I wish we were in person. We're going to try and get back to in person because Zoom is hard, but it's just not quite safe for us to do so right now. So we'll send out an announcement on for our first in-person chapter meeting, yet to be determined. A few notes of chapter business. Tate up there just sent out the newsletter, which advertised tonight's meeting. It also advertised a chance to comment on the coastal steelhead management for this upcoming season up on the Olympic Peninsula. So if you did not get a chance to take a look at that, you didn't get the newsletter, let me know and we'll send it out. But WDFW is looking for public comment on, well, waiting to hear, what people think in terms of what WDFW should do with steelhead fishery restrictions and management for the upcoming steelhead season on most of the Olympic Peninsula rivers. So if you've got opinions, throw them out there. I think most of our chapter membership is in favor of a closure. I will just tell you that. As a means to protect the stocks that are predicted to come back well under escapement goals. So you don't have to say that. You can throw in your own opinions, but it's great to hear from folks around the region because the coastal steelhead management does impact our rivers up here in terms of where we send anglers and who fishes where for steelhead throughout the season. So make sure to make your voice heard on that one. I'll also put in a plug. May 14th is a save the date for Spayapalooza. Most of you folks are already aware of what that is, but it's our celebration of all things two-handed casting, usually held at Howard Miller Steelhead Park in Rockport. So we are doing that in person this year. We're going to try and make it a bit of a 2-day event. We can kind of spread folks out a bit, but May 14th will be the big one. So keep your eye out for more details on that. Anyone else from chapter leadership that I think I'm forgetting anything, or any of our volunteers want updates on anything? Hearing nothing. Awesome. Okay. Well, without further ado, I'm going to let Jameson take it away. I'll have him introduce himself. We've got some videos, some visuals to show you, and this is going to be awesome. I'm really excited. So, Jameson, it's all yours. Go ahead.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Jameson, and it's awesome to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. Much appreciated. If a baby runs through that door at any point, it could happen. So I apologize in advance. So myself, I am a wood carver. I do stuff like this, which is, as you can tell, a nice little brookie. And yeah, so I do carvings. I am a videographer at Grizzly Industrial in town. That is my 9 to 5, and I do this late into the night, later than I should most nights. I will carve everything from what you see behind me, which are tables, custom pieces of fish I catch. And basically what you'll see actually in the video that's coming up, this is one of the examples, which is actually that carving you see right behind me, put into that table. So I do a series called Catch to Carve, where myself and I believe my buddy here is on the call. We go out and we target a new species with each episode, and then the goal is to catch, release, and then carve a replica of that fish. So I still have more to do with quite a few, and yeah, maybe we'll take off with that into the video. And it's a brookie, by the way. Spoiler alert.
Sure thing. Let me get the video tuned up here. I'm also going to put in a link to Jameson's YouTube channel for folks that are interested in checking out more of his videos.
Oh,
But let
and
me,
so at any point here, like I guess I should probably throw that out there right now is if at any point you have questions about woodworking, or I want to kind of cover how I got started doing this, and it's not as hard or scary as you guys think. So just to kind of walk you through that later on. But if you have questions, please throw them out there. I'll be able to see you ping me on here. So
sweet. Okay, we tested this out and it worked, but if folks are having trouble hearing audio or anything, just like wave frantically at me and I will pause it so that we can all see. Okay, give me a thumbs up if we can see this screen with the trees. Great, okay, cool.
Into the foothills.
Oops.
And this is going to hopefully involve a brook trout.
We're gonna start from the beginning.
We are on another catch to carve adventure right now. And that takes us into the foothills. And this is going to hopefully involve a brook trout. The scenery has changed a little bit as we got up in the clouds. Pat and I have been hiking for way too long now. And hopefully we're getting near the lake. Our target species is brookies in perfect fall color. Hopefully the lake's not dry. But it's turning out to be a really pretty hike though. Good day to take off of work. We made it to the first lake and this is absolutely gorgeous. This little lake slash pond, I would call it a pond, is just, we watched a couple fish come up. Pat might get his dream of catching them on the dry. He's been struggling with the dry just a bit. Oh, there's a brookie right there. Look at that brookie. Oh my gosh, he's gorgeous. Cool. All right. So it's about to happen. Catch the carve. I am actually seeing a gorgeous little brook trout right now. I got one that we've been watching rise up or kind of just do his thing over a log. You can actually see it moving over there at the corner right now. But I just spotted another one close up. I'm about to wander down and see if I can't catch a gorgeous fall brook trout. Look at the color on this one. Oh my goodness. Oh, beauty. Goodness. Yes. Oh, wow. Did not take long. Oh, fell right out. Look at the coloration on that fish. Is that not the most beautiful fish? Absolutely gorgeous. It's waving at you. I think it was best sound ever. Second cast of the day, maybe third. I got it done. Beautiful trout. Hopefully this is my carver. If not,
I think we had a buffer issue there on my end.
that is a beautiful trout not far from home. Made a little approach. This is a bog lake, so where I'm standing might not be the most secure, safe bet, but I know there's logs under me. I'm just taking one step at a time, and I know that there's some brook right there. Let's get one. Cat gets to work on this. Oh, look at that fish. Oh, that's a dandy. Look at that pattern. So we spent a couple hours on this awesome little pond behind us. We had a great hike in, great fish. Pat did some work with the dry fly. I did some work with little Prince nymph pattern. Now we're going to head back, and I will see you in the shop for this carve. Cut. Now I'll see you in the shop for the carve segment of this video. So you've just been watching as I got the brook trout down to size and sanded to 220 grit. So that is ready to go. Right now it's on to fins. So let's head to the bandsaw. Just had a minor oopsie. This happens quite a bit where you have a weak point on the fin and the grain structure and you're inserting it, it's just too tight. So that's sheared off. Now, the idea here is I have this little piece of steel. It could be anything, welding wire, it could be anything you want. I just happen to have this like D-ring around. You basically can bend it, have a nice little C shape. Now I'm going to put a little hollow little channel into the heaviest part of the fin with my Dremel tool and then epoxy that into place. Never be seen, and then that will be solid enough to drill a hole and go into there. All right, so we are about to jump into the painting process for this brook trout. There's really no process here other than I'm going to go off my reference images and try and draw out those colors as best I can. Now, I haven't touched this carving in a little while since I have been working on the table that it will live in, and that was kind of dependent on the carving. So I worked on the table, which I will have a full build video, and I will link it up above here. Now, you can check that out shortly. It's really cool. I love how it turned out, and I will now show you the painting process. Not the whole process. This is going to take a while, but most of it. Let's go. That is a bright fish. So things are looking really good. And now I got the first base coat down. So I'm going to go ahead and use the brush to kind of add some really fine detail stuff. And then I'll take the airbrush and actually go back over that to kind of knock that down a little bit because it can be way too much with the brush. So I'm going to go ahead and add some details. Hard to tell. I'm adding a little orange to this transition between the red and the yellow. I swear it's there. I swear. That is a lot of layers of paint for one little fish. So I basically have this thing ready to go. There's some little fine details I'm going to do, like scale details, which I'll show you here in a little bit. But I'm going to try another technique with some colored pencils to kind of accentuate parts of the fish a little more detailed and then go over it with the clear coat. I've never tried that before, so I'm not going to actually show you that part unless it totally rocks and works because I'm not obviously good at it. So when I can perfect it a bit, I'll see if it works and then I'll share it with you. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and add a little more detail to this and then I'll show you the scaling detail, little tiny spots, and finish.
I've seen that video like 4 times now, and it never gets any less impressive. It's so cool.
Thank you. I honestly, after I make a video and I put it live, I rarely go back to look at it because it's kind of like, oh, that's me. But it's so that video represents kind of, I mean, it's literally this table right here behind me because that was one that meant a lot to me. And a lot of my carvings are basically things that I have adventures out there, like you saw it. My Catch to Carve series is very much that way, where that's the whole premise. Is actually my goal is to go around the entire state, and if you could target it with a fly rod, I want to actually catch it, document it, carve it, and have that in that series. So that's something my friend Pat and I are into and having a blast, and also want to expand beyond just the Washington State area. But yeah, so basically, again, if you guys have questions, there was a lot flying around in that video to make something like this. But it's also, it shouldn't be that scary, because it may look like a lot happening, and I'm very fortunate to have a full wood shop to work in now that I've acquired. But I basically, as a starting point, I started doing this just kind of out of necessity, because I got like a Trout Unlimited catalog back in the day, like the wish list catalog for, you know, your holiday gift stuff. And that's what started me carving these. Was I was completely broke, and I couldn't afford the coffee table that they had in there with the little fish scene in it. And that actually made me go, well, maybe I can make one of those. And I took scrap material from a job site I was working, and I made my first fish. Didn't look anything like this. It looked like I described it to Bridget. It looked like a hot dog painted like a rainbow trout. It was brutal. But my friend still has it, and it lived in I was very happy of the table. It made me feel accomplished. And I did it with a chisel, a hammer, and maybe, I mean, I didn't even have sandpaper. I think I used a file. So the thing is, you like, that was where I started, and it was a piece of driftwood too, wet driftwood from the Dungeness River where I lived. So not ideal, but, and also I didn't know YouTube existed. So that really helped me learn a lot. And now I get the chance to create these videos where people can see an adventure, and I can go and actually show them how. And I answer a ton of questions on there too, on how to do this from like all over the world, which is a blast. And the process is very much the same now that I have a feel for it, and tools are pretty affordable realistically. Once I figured out what I needed, it's really attainable by anybody. You can start, like starting a carving process with something like as simple as this. These are basic carving chisels that you can buy like at any hardware store, and you're into it $50, and you can create any fish you want to with enough time. But beyond that, the things that I use that you saw in that video that look kind of technical are things like a bandsaw. You don't actually need that all the time. Things like a Dremel tool that you can get at Home Depot. That is your primary thing to make any crazy shape you saw with wood. And then it's having a source of wood, which is in that case basswood, and you can get that right downtown in Bellingham. So that's from like Windsor Plywood. You can buy pieces of basswood like this, well, not like that done, but a block of this, and then you could draw a pattern off of your experience or off Google, and the next thing you know, you're on your way to cutting out a fish. And I started off with driftwood that got me close to the form that I wanted, the movement that I could pull off, and I started carving from that point. So my experience basically kind of walks through all of kind of what not to do, because I didn't know books existed to walk you through the process of making a fish from scratch. That was a huge learning curve changer. There's literally a fish carving guide, and I used that more or less to start off once I got going. And it was just, once you create the first project, you just keep creating new designs and new elements. Like you can see behind me here, this is a basic shadow box from recycled material from a tree that fell up in Linden. And I have a stream bed inside of it with a German brown trout. And you just kind of figure out ways that can enrich your house. And then all of a sudden people see it and they go, well, that's cool. I want that in my house. And it kind of goes from there, to where I was doing this full time for a year and a half before I started at Grizzly Industrial, just because when you work like the fly fishing circuit, the festival like down in Linwood, they have the annual festival down there, or they did. I had a booth there, and you see that people walk through and they go, you know, as we all know, it's our hobby, but it's also our passion. So that's my fly fishing passion started when I was 12 years old, and this is just kind of my way of like keeping that passion going all the time, even when I'm not fishing. Um, but it all starts with going out, catching a fish, and realizing that's the most beautiful thing around, and figuring out how to make it. And the process is not as scary as you think. Too, like I mentioned before, it comes down to starting with a block of wood, drawing a pattern with something that you remember, and as close as you can get it. You can also buy books that have pre-made templates in them, like the fish carving. I think it's the fish carving guide. It has fold out templates for you. But the idea is you rough out a fish, or you use a jigsaw or a bandsaw or a scroll saw by hand, which I used to do, and you end up with fish like this. And it takes time to cut it out, but once you have it, you get an idea of form, and it gives you a rough starting point. And then it's on to Dremel tools, the $40 Dremel tool that you can get from Home Depot. And that helps you get your shape, get your form, get the movement, because with wood, you can capture any movement you can imagine with enough time and enough material, I guess, to flow a fish in a natural state. And you probably saw in that video, the brook trout that has like the fins I was carving. Every fin is, I'm going off a reference image, but every fin is in the motion of the fish. So the direction it's aiming. You know, some of them, most of the time, fish don't have that dramatic of a crazy move. But once you get your pattern down, the top down view of a fish like that, and kind of see what it's doing, that dictates, just off your experience, looking at fin shape and how they flow through the water. And it's very delicate. And as you saw, it gets very delicate when you shear one off. But then it's just forming very carefully and with the Dremel tool to get the shape you want. And I screw up a lot of fins because they're very thin pieces, but that's actually kind of the fun of the process, is getting it as close to oops breaking as possible. And the end result is a more lifelike fish. And you saw there, you get into things like scale detailing. And I can show you some of the photos I have here from my previous fish carvings, where scales are as simple as looking like a golf ball, which I've made many fish end up looking like a golf ball, because I didn't know how to detail a fish, how to make those scales really pop. And lo and behold, they have a wood burning thing that you saw me do for the actual fins on that fish. And for a fish like this, just cutthroat right here, you can see all these wood burning details. They have scaling tips for those details as well. You can see every single scale in there is just it's like a stress test for you and your eyes after a while. But it's finding a pattern that is as realistic as possible. And you can find scaling tips for wood burners that are that exact size, tiny. Going from that took me a long time to figure out that existed. I started off by either not doing scales in general, or I ended up doing a golf ball texture that literally was a Dremel tool, and you would do little dots. For every scale you see on there, that would be a single dot. So it would feel funny, but it looked like a scale because it gave the impression. And that's just ways you learn and figure out. Again, the barrier for entry on a scaling tip like this and a wood burner is about 50 to 70 bucks on Amazon. So it's not a huge deal breaker, but it adds a huge amount of detail to your end result. This hangs up in my shop, so that's why I have it kind of, my kids also dropped it. So that's really nice of them. But that's kind of what gets you up to that painting process, is doing all that movement, all that detail, and filling in gaps. Like you can see on this fish in particular, there's Bondo that is a filler. There's epoxy fillers. There's all these things that if you go through my channel, I walk you through basically every single step, even something as crazy as a carp. So there's your freshwater bonefish in action. Something like a carp has, and I mean, a lot of movement. Like the scale detail on this, I was thinking, boy, these will be easy. These things are the size of silver dollars. That is not the case. These are probably the most labor intensive scales. My back started hurting there. And so I stopped working on it. But these are like these kind of fish, you learn. And I've done everything from carp now to a 5.5 foot sturgeon for a game warden. It was his favorite fish. And that was the weirdest one I've done. But basically, you kind of learn as you go, and things like scaling details for that, you just look at good references. I've caught carp a long time ago, and on the fly rod, they're probably one of the toughest fish, strongest fish. And you just think of how to make that a reality as far as like texturing with a wood burner or a Dremel or by hand with the chisel set. And with enough time and kind of thought into the process, you'll come up with it, and it turns out beautiful. I mean, I've put a fish into basically anything from shadow boxes to entry tables to a mantle in my bedroom to just one of a kind, one-off pieces that hang on fireplaces. Actually, my good friend has two steelhead that I carved up on his rock fireplace. And you can put a fish into anything, including something like this, which this is a little Chinook salmon par that is in a net that I made. And this full build video is also on my YouTube channel. And this net is one of my favorite things I've ever made because it's guitar blank, what you'd make guitar out of, like quality material, maple. And then I hand carved this cool little 5-inch Chinook salmon par and put it in epoxy in the handle. I'd never seen that before. And I had gone fishing on the Yakima River, and that was one of the very few things I caught. My wife outfished me, and that was cool. But I ended up catching these little salmon par, and that inspired me to make a carving. And then it ends up in a net. And then I put it on Instagram, and more people ask about it because they've never seen anything like that. And now I have 2 more going out in my shop that are Christmas presents that people ordered from me. And it just kind of goes from there because people see what you can do by blending things like learning how to make a net and carving a fish and woodworking in general. And it's just kind of a beautiful mesh of everything we all love. So that's my process. My history is if you go back and look at it, it's a very simple approach where you just keep asking what do I want for my own home? Because what you want for your home is probably what other people would want as well, artistically, especially people in this meeting. I can imagine y'all are, the same mindset. And that's kind of one of the cool things is if you can think it, most likely you can create it. And that's kind of what I love to convey in my channel and with my work itself. I mean, I create everything in my shop. I try not to let anything stop me. You can go on there and actually see I make an 11-foot tiger shark. And that sounds weird, but it's for our middle school here where my wife teaches. And my wife teaches a science class, and there's actually now an 11-foot tiger shark hanging in there, made out of foam. And it's just also one of the favorite things I've ever made. But yeah, that's kind of like the progression. I don't know where to go from there in a progression of putting fish into things or making an 11-foot tiger shark is usually kind of where people would be like, well, that's, I guess, a great white next. But no, there's no limit to what you guys can do. And it's going out with like actually on the DNA survey last year and doing some sampling out in the field that helps like inspire me. And I get random cool stuff from like on Instagram on there. I show all the stuff in progress, and I get I just did a net. Actually, I donated a net for conservation back in back in the St. or James River Basin project. And that's a smallmouth bass is the fish that everyone targets back there. And they asked if I could put something together for their conservation auction that was at Bass Pro Shops. And so I put a net very similar to this, but with an oxbow river of epoxy going through the middle of it, and then a smallmouth bass fry right here. And that's what I sent to them. I think it made $450 in auction. So that went toward conservation. And like, that's one of the fun things about doing what I do is you put it out there, people see it, and they appreciate it for the craftsmanship, the work. And when they come into my house, they're like, yeah, you're obsessed with fishing. And that's cool. And I appreciate that too. So yeah, that's kind of where, I mean, you guys have any questions or anything? Is this something that maybe anybody has pondered before, or, you know, really been inspired to give it a try? Because I love questions of any kind here in my channel. Not really sure how to answer those questions on here because I'm new, but
Yeah, Ralph Lloyd here. I have a suggestion. Do you know Bill McMillan? He lives on the Skagit. He was one of the, he was the second president of the Washington Trout, which is now Wild Fish Conservancy. He did a 2-year study on wild native trout in Eastern Washington. He's got tons of pictures. You catch them and put them in a fish tank and take pictures of them. He might be a fantastic resource for you.
Now that is perfect. So one of the videos I put together actually as well on mine is a photo aquarium. I started Googling how to make an aquarium because I wanted a way like to properly handle fish without harming them at all. Get them into a photo aquarium with a reference scale. So I actually did a little build video on that. So same mindset where, you know, I'm still going out there and trying to catch him. If he's got reference images, I love reference images because a good example, there's a gentleman back in New Hampshire who just got his 90,000th fish on fly rod, catch and release fish. Now that number, like that freaks me out. But he literally documented it since the age of 16, and his son-in-law contacted me on Facebook. And now it's not some like glorious New Zealand brown either. It's like an 8-inch brown trout with his 90,000th documented fish. But that's something to be super proud of. So now that is my task, is I'm going to film and make his replica of that fish that he caught and released. So he's been in like Field and Stream when he hit his 60,000. So the fact that now at 90,000 fish, I am able to like be part of that story is like super cool to me. And when it comes to like references from that gentleman there, I mean, it's, you know, reference images or going out and sharing people's stories. Like that's a big part of what I like to do, is every one of the catch to carve you can see on my channel, and the ones I already have filmed and just need to make the fish, are part of the whole thing is a story. And, you know, the end result of an adorable little brook trout, most people be like, oh, that was cool. But you turn it's a story. It's an adventure that I had with my good friend. And it's something that now I captured in a table that I will remember forever. And I plan to do that with as many species as possible, up to golden trout, tiger muskie, everything. So having reference images though, because it's not always a one-to-one, you know, exact copy. It's great to have contacts like that. But yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so don't take up birds, okay?
Too late. Yeah, so I'm starting a kestrel, American kestrel, pretty soon. So yeah, that's
You're a lost man.
I know. There's a lot of detail in a bird. It's ridiculous. If you think scale details on a tiny trout are a bit obsessive, yeah, it goes downhill from there.
I mean, Do you have videos of making birds, or do you anticipate having videos of your bird
Yeah.
making process?
I try and document most of what I make in the shop. Now I have kind of set up to where my YouTube channel, and I'm getting into actually making the forms for my nets like this. I'm actually getting to set up so others, because I get asked almost, well, every other day basically, like, do you sell templates or do you make templates for people?
Mm.
And that's something I am actually going to be doing because I get so many questions on it. So you can actually make these, people can make them at home without the guesswork. So
Yeah, I've made several nets out of cherry that I logged off my own property, and they're gorgeous.
it's, a net takes a surprising amount of time.
Yes, it
to
does. And,
Uh,
and the interesting thing, if you make your own nets, you can make the handle as short or as long as you want, depending on whether you're going to be fishing out of a boat or out of a float tube. You want a short handle for a float tube. You want a long handle for a boat, right?
Exactly. And you can make it, basically there are net baskets, the silicone catch and release style, for every size you can imagine. So if you can make the template for it, the actual hoop part, you can have, I mean, you just know your dimensions of your net itself and off you go. Like, it's actually very straightforward and also pretty affordable to get into when I started making them as well. From steam bending, which is a fun thing to do.
Right.
Also can be really stressful when you're bending wood around anything that sometimes doesn't go so well. As
Yeah,
you might
it's
see
a
from
trial
my-
and error to learn how long you have to steam wood based on its thickness and whatnot to, so it'll bend without breaking. Yes.
Yes. And no matter what, when you work with the most beautiful woods around, like a guitar quality maple or walnut or anything, you're asking for material that it's a beautiful because it maybe has a defect or some sort of something that makes it maybe not as strong, but it's gorgeous. That's kind of a weird trick to some types of hardwoods. So you learn those things, like what to avoid when you're making nets, kind of by cursing at it after it breaks. But yeah. I'm trying to think of other examples. I do have, and I can see if I can share my screen, just a representative kind of progression of what it is I've caught, where I started more or less, without showing the like ones that look like a hot dog that is a rainbow trout.
Oh no, we'd like to see that.
Cool. I will do my best here to pull it up and screen share. So, one sec. And it might also like cue music. It was trying to like play Beethoven on me. I don't know why. So hang tight. Let's see, desktop. Open.
Was your sturgeon made completely from wood too?
It was.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
Yeah, that thing was a lot of basswood. And basswood is my general, it is my general material of choice. Let's see, it's not allowing me to actually open, darn. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, so the basswood doesn't split or splinter, or it's a really nice medium to carve. It's kind of like carving maybe plastic or something like that.
I like to compare it to maybe balsa wood. If you think of balsa wood, everybody's kind of been to the hobby store maybe, and you feel how light and pillowy that might be, like soft. It's very much like that, but it'll hold, like each one of these carvings, they hold a carving or a burning tip very well.
Mhm.
So basswood's pretty inexpensive, and it holds nice shapes very well. So I highly recommend that. There's other types you can carve. I mean, I've carved everything you can imagine, from walnut to sapele to, well, ebony. That was not fun. But yeah, it's endless. Even post and beam material is what I started with. So when you build your house, the things that built your house, Douglas fir and hemlock, that turned into fish at some point in my career here. So
Do you have a favorite? What's been your favorite to carve with so far?
the favorite material would be basswood. And again, you can get basswood easily at Windsor Plywood in Bellingham has a good selection of it. So that's the easiest one to start with, smallest price point. Highly recommend that. Yeah, toughest would be ebony, and you always wear a respirator. You saw actually in that video, I placed my respirator out. I have a downdraft table is what it's called, that with all those holes that sucks sawdust down and away from me. I wear a respirator while I'm working on it. On any of these fish, that's just kind of, you're making a lot of dust. So dust collection is essential. Everything from the eyeballs of the fish, I try to match the species. For example, this cutthroat, these are taxidermy grade eyeballs. You can go to Mackenzie, I think it is Mackenzie taxidermy on Google, just say fish eyeballs. You can get them off Amazon even, and they match the species and diameter you need. So yeah, you can get those all over the place. And it adds that extra level of detail without being a googly eye that you'd have, something goofy.
Awesome stuff as always, Jameson. I've long been a fan of your work. One of the things that really fascinated me that I know you've started doing is some of your actual hand carved bass lures. Can you do you have some examples of those? Can you talk a little bit about the process that goes into making something that's actually jointed and has an action and that is durable enough to go out and fish with?
So yeah, the bass lures, that was something that I've watched my friends go out and spend $150 on a what's called a wake bait. So something that looks exactly like a bluegill. And I have some actually at my shop. I unfortunately don't have them here. I do have a build video again for that on my channel, but the wake bait is like a 6-inch bluegill lure that looks as lifelike as possible, and it rides on the surface and has this very nice action because as Scott mentioned there, it's a joint that's in about 2/3 the way back so the tail can move freely, and that's a very simple joint to actually create and carve. And well, simple, I guess. You kind of have to have a good reference to look at to see how they work through the process of it. But I ended up making my first attempt at this lure once again using the foundations of carving fish. I made a very realistic bluegill that when it swam, the bass in Lake Terrell in particular absolutely crushed it. And I had probably the best day or best 2 hours of bass fishing that I've ever had off of a handmade lure that I built in my shop. And now I make more of them, and I'm actually have plans this winter to make a whole bunch of different kinds. Like rat lures are an actual thing. You can actually carve a rat. And bass apparently very much hate rats. And yeah, so you get the same effect. Like they will hit them with reckless abandon and a larger caliber of fish too, which Lake Terrell, I've been out there fly fishing for them with big streamers and zeroed a lot. And then the fish you do catch tend to be those little, 13-inch ones out there that they fight like crazy and hit poppers. But when you up it to a larger 6-inch bluegill lure, there's some monster fish in that lake. So something that's fun to do.
I'll share my screen. I just pulled up a still from that video. If folks have not seen it before, that's an example of the bass lure that he's talking about. And this is part of one of the videos on this channel.
Yeah, and that one was that's a 3-part series there. I'm actually gonna be doing just single build videos on those where it's from the carving process to, in that case, I did a mold of that lure. So now I can reproduce it just because everybody's been out there casting and all of a sudden you watch that thing just wing off into nowhere. Well, you don't want to have that be that handmade lure that you carved from scratch that went flying off in the woods. So that's kind of why I reproduce those. And also, actually there's folks that even here that might find those interesting, and I, friends and I hand them out to friends and stuff like that too, who catch some giant fish on them. So it's definitely a fun thing to do.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could share my screen here. I'm sorry, I'm not like up on Zoom etiquette so much.
If you have, if it's like a PowerPoint or something, Jameson, you can email it to me too, and I can share it on mine, or if you're having trouble.
Unfortunately, I don't know if I have the ability right now.
Look
Yeah.
at your lower left-hand corner on the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, it's just asking me to do preferences on here, and yeah,
Yeah.
it might take me all night, so sorry. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what, you know, it all boils down to. What I'd love to kind of leave you guys with here is, you know, I love, if you're on YouTube at all, or on Instagram or Facebook, you guys can find me. If you have, this seems like something interesting to you, to carve fish and to kind of get into something like this, it's like my passion project to actually make these things. And when people show interest in it, I answer any questions, and I love talking their ear off about it. So if this is something that's interesting to you, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on my YouTube videos, on comments. I can meet up. And if you want to go fishing and target new species, I have a laundry list of fish, from the dollies, you know, going bull trout, which probably don't ever want to touch. But like most of the salmon species, I still have to knock off the list. The bass I've got taken care of, but every panfish you can imagine is on my list too. And big and small, I'm out there trying to chase them with a fly rod. So if you're interested in doing that in this group, just touch base with me, either Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, because again, that's part of the story. Is if you guys have a species you want to target, like sea run cutthroat is still on my list. Sadly, I've caught a ton of them, but not with catch to carve in mind. So species like that are definitely on the short list. And yeah, if you're interested in doing that, or you don't mind me pointing a camera at you while you catch fish, you know.
Jameson, I think since you and Pat were helping out with the eDNA collection, I think at least half the people in the meeting tonight could probably put you on what we now know as a certifiable definite Dolly Varden. So,
Well, all right.
they're only about this big.
No, now that again, it's,
They're super fun.
the reoccurring theme maybe at this point. Some of the fish I've caught, like on Pass Lake, I got a giant brown out of there. But that's kind of the, you know, I got a giant smallie, I got a big brown, and a nice chum. But a lot of the fish you'll see if you go on there, like West Slope Cutthroat, it wasn't that big. But you'll see, probably everyone here, you'll see lakes that you've probably been to, or river systems. And like, that's also, I know it's like hot spotting in a way. I never call out the name of the lake, but as we all know, there's no real secret in that anymore. You can kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
But that's kind of half the fun, is letting people know, like, I try and go far enough into the backcountry if I can to get away. And then I try to, you know, sometimes it's as close as Lake Terrell, so you're just launching a canoe, but other times you're hiking in, like Pat and I did, 2.5 miles to the little pond, just on a whim. And that's the adventure, especially if you can take off work to do it. That's a good adventure.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other questions, or
Yeah, so,
like
this is Brandon. I was just wondering if you do like commission work. So if I were to catch fish and want a carving, could you make that happen? And if so, are like there any like specific photos you need, or just take as many photos as possible and get them over to you?
as many photos. I do the commission stuff, like the 90,000th fish. That one was like, wow. A lot of the time I've been focusing now on that catch to carve series, because I'm trying to knock off that list, because it's like anyone who embarks, I saw on Trout Unlimited, the guy did the trout slam and toured around. That was a great read, by the way. But the key is, if you would like a carving, I always will hear you guys out, like to see if I can pencil it in, because my carvings and woodworking now is relegated to about 2 hours a night at best, if I can get away from the babies, which they're right outside the door. You might hear them. But that's when I get my chance to go out in the shop and do my thing. So I try and pencil in as much cool stuff. So if you do catch a giant fish that you're, catch and release that you're super stoked on, grab as many photos as you can. Obviously don't overhandle the fish, but any photos that are as good a quality as possible I can reference is basically all I need to go with. And dimensions are always a plus. Girth, not as essential, but length is always good. So I can pull from references of nets or hands and stuff to get the rest.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I think a chum salmon would be really cool if you could get like all the teeth, the detail of the teeth.
I have a very frantic run down. I had to like run down the river chasing the one that I had hooked up. So that's already been caught, and I just need time to carve it. This is a monster fish. Those are
I have a pile of chum canines that I wonder if you could like put that in the carvings. That would be cool.
actually, yes. So like
Let's
oddly,
talk.
you can do that. Like as long, yeah, you can actually pull that off.
Cool.
Yeah, cool details like that, like a lot of what you see too, maybe behind me, I don't know if it shows up, but I try to match when folks contact me. Like I've done largemouth bass carvings where they caught the fish and it was chasing smallmouth bass. Well, I carved a smallmouth bass to go with it. I try to match the environment that the person, like in that case in Alabama, northern Alabama, I try to match the location, the lake, as much as possible. So my friend Pat and I went out and he got his first Lahotan cutthroat over at Lake Lenore, and trying to match that look of that lake and that feels also, with something like a carp, that's going to be, I guess a muddy, silty bottom, but it's going to be pretty plain because that's where you usually find them. But the fly is what I try to have in that scene and things like that to make it seem alive. And that's the goal.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Any weird fish you guys can think of? Like, what would you want? Like, if you could think of like one fish that you're like, that would be a weird one I could never envision carved here in Washington State that I could go target. What would you guys go after?
That you can target in Washington State?
Yeah. Something that like I'm very happy with, like driving aimlessly to search out water that might hold like a tiger muskie is on my short list, because that'd be crazy. But like what are species that folks here like would kind of dream of targeting in our state to go after with a fly?
I think a catfish would be cool to carve. Maybe not as cool to catch with the fly.
That would be
impressive to carve.
Well, Lake Terrell has about 3 catfish in it. One of them was a state record, so maybe that would be cool though.
They have those whiskers hanging down.
And that would be a
There's
struggle. Like
catfish in Moses Lake. I was raised there, and we caught them when I was a kid. Oh, black crappie.
Awesome. That's a great one. And so I fished Tennant Lake is a good one here up north, when you can actually get into it, and it's not a lily pad nightmare. There are some gigantic black crappie in there. So you only have about a month window of the year to get in there, in about early April, when it opens up and you're good to go. But that's actually on my short list. Is they're big slab crappie in there. So just a fun fact if anyone wants to go ply around in the lily pads. But great idea.
Scott, you've got some good photos of lingcod.
A lingcod would be awesome.
Yeah.
That
Or a black rockfish, a kelp greenling would be a cool one.
Yeah, yellow eye bass.
nice. The saltwater game is intimidating for me. And that's something I was on the books with my buddy Pat here is on the call. We were going to go out and target lings this last year with the 10 weight. And that unfortunately didn't pan out with motor issues, but I was this close. So that's awesome. Great suggestion. The greenling, I've heard of them, but I've never actually seen one before. So that's,
Yeah, their flesh is green.
oh, well, that doesn't sound very appetizing, but I'm sure it'd be, is it?
Oh,
like
well,
good?
when you cook it, it turns white.
Okay. Cool.
I'll put in a plug for a Pacific lamprey. I think that would be super cool to carve.
All right, so I missed that chat. Are they like an aggressive fish? Will they chase something like a fly? Like,
No.
no? Okay. I've
They're-
seen
they're
them
a
when I work.
parasite.
What's that?
They're a parasite, so they try and find a host to attach onto, not necessarily chase any bugs or anything.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it was the lamprey or the Pacific lamprey was when I worked for the public utility Grant PUD over in Eastern Washington. You'd see them in that fish ladder cam, I believe.
Mhm.
They got pretty big, like surprisingly.
It can, yeah. But I don't think you'd ever get one on a fly
Nah.
unless they were.
Flounder or a rock sole. You can get those on a fly, some sort of a flatfish.
Oh, that would be cool.
That would be an interesting challenge to carve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Birch Bay actually is pretty decent year round. Just anything shrimpy, even an olive woolly bugger, you just want to drag it along the bottom so it kind of leaves a trail.
Huh.
You'll catch them all the time up there.
Sweet.
Oh,
Okay.
starry
This is
flounder.
good. This gives me like inspiration because I sit in this room right off my spare bedroom here. I have a walk-in closet, tiny little area that I have dedicated to my fly tying desk that I built in there. And like I will literally, for each one of the fish you see on my Catch to Carve series, I dedicate time to sit there and drink a bourbon with my buddy Pat, or to just go into my little room right here and tie up specific flies for each fish I target. And that is like part of that story that I enjoy, putting together for those videos. So
Yeah, I've caught 3 starry flounder on flies.
sweet.
Yeah, 2 on the surface and one when I went to Bush Point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there is a chance. Okay. I need to like get out there into saltwater more, I guess. I always see the confluence, like salt, like the report when the salmon are rolling through, and I'm like, I need to go to Whidbey. I need to go play at Whidbey. And Scott, I always feel bad. I never get out there.
One of these you'll make it.
Go ahead, Scott.
One of these days you'll make it out there. And yeah, winter can be a good time, especially like for the sea run bull trout, sometimes resident blackmouth, but this is going to be one of those winters where it's going to be hard to catch the rivers in shape.
Yeah.
if we get a chance at all. So.
Yeah, the winter time, again, this is kind of, when it comes to carving, this is kind of one of the best times to get caught up. I have a backlog of, I think, 3 carvings I can catch up on for that Catch to Carve series. And this is a chance for me to do that. I'm also doing custom nets right now as well. So I'm kind of all over the place. Obviously a carp, that's not my carp. That's for a gentleman down in Mount Vernon. But it's really a chance to, like, since things are really cold, I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to the cold. I can actually like go out in the shop, get the fire going, and start carving and just have a blast doing it. It's a good hobby for the winter months. Any other questions or woodworking questions? Anything? Is this something that maybe others have considered? I always never really know, like, if that's something that, like, either carving or adding a fish to a table is something that others maybe have been like, oh, I thought that too.
Yeah, what's the what were you using on the grinder in that video to kind of do your rough shaping?
Yeah, so rough shaping, that's a great, that is just a flap disc that you can also get at Home Depot, Lowe's, anywhere. They come in.
So just the same thing you use for a metal?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
I use a 36 grit, I use a 60 grit and 120 grit, I think. And they wear down eventually, but those things will just chew through material to get you down to, down to this rough shape, to then begin the sanding process, which you can either hand sand or you can get down to a orbital sander. Again, something you can pick up at any Harbor Freight or something. But yeah, I forgot to mention that angle grinder that you can pick up also at those stores. It really makes a huge difference. It means you don't have to sit there and literally hand chisel like I used to do. That took forever. Yeah, any woodworking questions or anything like that?
I guess one other fish, if you're gonna start fishing in the salt that you're gonna have to carve, is gonna be a sculpin, because you can't not catch sculpin if you're fishing off the beach.
I've caught them about that big and I didn't even know they were there. Did they get much bigger? I haven't seen one bigger.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sweet. Well, those are a cool looking fish. That's a mini lingcod in my book, so I'm already on the board.
Super ugly. Yeah. Fun
I would carve it. Like, that's the thing, is like, if I catch it, like, yeah, I mean, even down to like I mentioned, the little Chinook salmon par, little things like that. I caught it. I'm very proud of it. I'm happy that I got to experience it, and I'll put it in a net handle someday. I mean, that's kind of my take on it. But yeah, that's about it for my process and kind of what I cruise through here out in Everson. So again, Bridget, I'll let you take it away, but anybody, if you want to touch base, if you're intrigued by this or you want a gear list or anything, please feel free to touch base with me. It's fun to talk about this stuff. So
Right on. And for those that joined after I put the link in the chat, I'll put it in again. So that's Jameson's YouTube channel there. And honestly, if we had 8 hours to spend in this meeting, we could just watch all these videos together. They're really cool. Especially, I highly recommend taking a look at the process of making those bass lures. Those are so impressive, so cool. And Jameson, if folks want to get a hold of you, is that a good way to do so, or what's some good contact?
Honestly, I don't know if there's in notes for this. riverbendwoodworks@gmail.com is my emails that I check 8 times a day, unfortunately. But Instagram, it's @riverbend_woodworks. And yeah, yeah, those are probably, I will always get back to you on Instagram. Facebook is just Jameson Hawn. You can touch base on direct message there too. And yeah.
I think we, for folks that want to find him on Facebook and Instagram, we tagged him in some of our recent posts announcing the meetings. You can go back and look through those and click on his profile. And then I also put his email in the chat if you want to copy and paste that somewhere. Cool. Jameson, thank you so much for doing this. This was really cool. And I have to say, I think the best part of this is not only your incredible talent and your passion that's evident in what you create, but your passion for educating others and kind of bringing people along with you and on the process and teaching other people how to do it as well. I think sometimes you miss that in artists. So it's really nice to see your enthusiasm for teaching people. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, that's why we kind of all got into fishing, I hope, is you kind of love to learn from others. I was brought under the wing of some great, fly fishing influences back in the day when I was younger, and it rubbed off. And now here I am all these years later, just kind of taking it to my next level, I guess. So it's always a joy to do that.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, I will bring this meeting to a close. And for December, I should have mentioned this earlier. For December, we're going to do a fly swap like we did last year. So this will be, we're trying to finalize the location and the date. So I don't know those two things yet, but I will let you know on Facebook, Instagram, newsletter as soon as we know. But keep an eye out for that. So we're not going to have a speaker series for December. We'll pick that back up in January and hope to see folks at a Christmas / Hanukkah / Kwanzaa / holiday New Year's fly swap next month. Cool. All right. It was awesome to see everyone, and we'll see you later. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
Thanks a lot, Jameson. That was really good.
Thanks, Jameson. Thanks, everyone.
Take it easy.
Everyone, thanks.